My MIL heard I was buying a house and sold theirs, assuming they'd move in with me. On inspection day, she arrived with the whole family saying, "We can finally live in a new house." I just laughed because the house wasn't for them. She said, "We can finally live in a new house," and I laughed. Not a polite laugh. Not the social laugh I have spent 6 years of marriage to her son carefully maintaining. The practiced, durable laugh of a woman who has learned to absorb a great deal with good humor and call it grace. This was involuntary. A sharp, reflexive sound that came out of my mouth before my brain could stop it. The way you laugh when someone walks into a glass door. The kind of laugh that is more honest than appropriate. Linda turned to me, confused. Behind her, her husband Ron was already frowning. Her daughter Megan had her phone half raised like she was about to document something. Her son-in-law Kyle had, for the first time in my recent memory, a fully alert expression on his face. Our real estate agent Tessa stood on the porch of the house I had not yet closed on, clipboard in hand, looking at the assembled crowd in the driveway with the polite confusion of a professional encountering a situation not covered in her training. And Jake, my husband, the man who had told his mother we were buying a house over Sunday dinner because he thought it was safe, was doing the thing he does when his family surprises him with a maneuver he didn't anticipate. His mouth was open. Nothing was coming out. Linda's smile was still on, but her eyes had sharpened the way they do when something hasn't gone the way she planned. "What's funny?" she asked. I looked at her. This woman who had sold the house she'd lived in for 30 years, packed up 3 decades of accumulated life, and announced herself into my future without once asking, and felt something click into place inside me. Calm, total, clarifying, irreversible calm. "This house," I said, "isn't for everyone. My name is Rachel Mercer, and I want to tell you something about Linda before I tell you the rest of this, because understanding what Linda is will help you understand why the driveway confrontation was not the end of the story. Linda Mercer is 61 years old. She is warm in the specific way of people who have learned that warmth is an extremely effective tool. Not false warmth, but the genuine article, deployed strategically and without apology. She is the kind of woman who remembers your coffee order and your sister's birthday, and the name of the contractor who replaced your water heater in 2019, and who uses all of this remembered information to create the impression of intimacy that she then gently calls in. She loves her son. This is real and not in question. She also believes that loving someone entitles you to a vote in their life, and that the vote should count more than other votes because the love is deeper, and that people who disagree with this are simply failing to understand how love works. I had been failing to understand how love worked, according to Linda, for 6 years. The pattern was familiar to me by now. Linda forms a plan. The plan is presented as already decided. Any objection is reframed as misunderstanding, and if the misunderstanding persists, the warm cools to a specific temperature that is not quite cold but is unmistakably a warning. I had lived inside this pattern for 6 years and managed it with the combination of patience, humor, and strategic information control that had kept our relationship functional, if not warm. The information control was the important part. I had learned 2 years into my marriage that any information I shared with Linda became, within a specific and predictable time frame, a committee, a calendar invite, a spreadsheet with color-coded tabs. If I mentioned we were thinking about a vacation, she would have hotel recommendations and a proposed itinerary before I had booked flights. If I mentioned a career development I was considering, she would have researched the field and identified the relevant professional associations and signed up for a related webinar. This was presented as love. I believed it was love. I also believed it was a mechanism, and that the two things were not mutually exclusive. When Jake and I started seriously house hunting 8 months ago, I did not tell Linda. Jake told Linda. He told her at Sunday dinner in early September because we had just had an offer accepted, and he was happy and he wanted to share the happiness with his family. He told her casually, between the salad and the main course, in the tone of someone sharing good news, which it was. It was also, as I had understood it would be, not safe. The text started the next morning. "Did you ask about the foundation? Foundations on houses that age can be tricky. Ron's cousin had a nightmare. Make sure you get a full electrical inspection, not just a visual. Full panel assessment. Attic insulation matters more than people think. Ask specifically about the attic." I had been doing this for 30 years without Linda's guidance, and the foundation was fine and I had a good inspector, but I responded pleasantly because I always responded pleasantly, because that is the tax on being Linda's daughter-in-law, and I had accepted the rate years ago. The texts continued for a week. Not worried mother texts, due diligence texts, the texts of someone who believes they have skin in the game. Then Jake came home on a Wednesday evening and said, almost carefully, in the particular tone he uses when he is about to tell me something he knows I will have a reaction to and is hoping the delivery will soften it, "My mom listed their house today." I went very still. She said it just feels like the right time. I looked at my husband. The right time. Because we were buying a house. I did not say that. I have thought many times since about whether I should have said it then, whether naming it directly in that moment might have changed the sequence of what followed. I don't know. What I know is that I didn't say it, and Jake didn't say it, and we both stood in our kitchen in the specific silence of two people who have arrived at the same understanding and have decided, mutually and wordlessly, not to have that conversation tonight. I should have had that conversation. I didn't. Inspection day was a cold Tuesday in October. We drove to the cul-de-sac at 9 a.m. for a 9:30 inspection with our inspector, Carl Briggs, 22 years of residential inspection in the Denver metro metro area, recommended by Tessa, a methodical man who wore the same gray fleece to every job and had the calming quality of someone who finds structural problems interesting rather than alarming. I saw Linda's Chevrolet Tahoe before we fully turned into the cul-de-sac, then Ron's Buick, then parked crookedly behind both of them in a way that suggested she had arrived last, and in a hurry, Megan's Subaru, all four of them in the driveway, waiting. Jake said very quietly, "Why is Megan here?" "I didn't invite her," I said, because it needed to be said out loud, even if only to him, even if it was obvious. We parked. We got out. Tessa was on the porch with her clipboard and the slightly baffled look of someone encountering an unexpected guest list. Carl was inside, already beginning the systematic walkthrough that was his process. 30 minutes of solo documentation before anyone else entered, which was his policy, and which I was grateful for because it meant the house was, at least temporarily, a Linda-free zone. Linda walked toward us before we had fully closed our car doors. She was smiling, the full smile, the one that means she has already made her decision and is now graciously allowing the rest of us to catch up. "We didn't want to miss it," she announced. "Miss what?" I asked. She looked past me at the house. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a corner lot, a backyard with a mature oak tree that I had noticed in the listing photos and had thought about every day since. A house I had been wanting for 8 months and was 17 days from owning. Linda's eyes did something I had not seen before. Not excitement exactly. Something more territorial. The specific light of someone who has located a thing they have decided belongs to them. "We can finally live in a new house," she said, casually, like commenting on the weather, and I laughed. The driveway went quiet after the laugh. Ron frowned. Megan's eyebrows went up. Kyle achieved full consciousness for the first time in recent memory. Linda's smile stayed technically present, but rearranged itself into something more questioning. "What's funny?" she asked. "This house," I said slowly, "isn't for everyone." Linda tilted her head. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" The sweetheart was a deployment. I knew it, and she knew I knew it. The particular endearment she used when she needed to reframe a conversation as something softer and more manageable than it was. "I mean, Jake and I are buying this house," I said. "Just us." She smiled like I had said something adorable and incorrect. "Of course you're buying it, but we sold ours. So we assumed combined resources, shared expenses. It makes sense for everyone." Assumed. Like we were a phone plan she'd already upgraded. "We never discussed that," I said. "You didn't need to," Linda replied, with the patient warmth of someone explaining something to a person who is not yet understanding. "Family plans together." That was when Tessa stepped down from the porch. I have thought about Tessa's timing many times since, whether it was instinct or training or pure professionalism or the specific alertness of a real estate agent who has seen enough family situations to recognize when the paperwork needs to enter the conversation. Whatever it was, she came down those porch steps at exactly the right moment, clipboard raised, voice bright, and entirely neutral. "Quick question, just for my records. Who will be on the title and mortgage?" I answered before Linda could form a response. "Just us, Jake and me." Tessa nodded and clicked her pen. "An occupancy is limited to the applicants on the loan. Additional permanent residents need to be disclosed to the lender. It affects the terms and the insurance disclosure." Linda blinked. "Insurance?" "Additional permanent residents change the liability structure," Tessa continued, in the pleasant tone of someone reciting policy rather than taking sides, which was exactly what she was doing and exactly what was needed. "Financial contribution from non-owners doesn't grant residency or ownership rights unless formally structured through the title." Ron crossed his arms. "We were planning to contribute to the mortgage." "That's very generous," Tessa said, "but it doesn't affect the occupancy terms." Linda's face changed. I had seen Linda's face through many configurations over 6 years. I had seen her warm, cold, disappointed, triumphant, hurt, calculating. I had not seen this one before. The specific expression of someone whose primary tool has just been removed from her hand. The warmth, the guilt, the family plans together. None of those things applied to mortgage documentation. None of those things had a response to liability structure. She turned to Jake. "Sharp, you knew we sold the house." Jake's voice finally returned. "You said you were downsizing." "We are." Her voice had shed the warmth now, the way a jacket comes off when the weather changes. "We expected to transition into our house," I said. The words landed cleanly, not cruel, just accurate. Linda's eyes moved to mine. "So where are we supposed to go?" she asked. I held her gaze. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but it isn't here." They left before the inspection was finished. Not immediately. Linda is not a woman who exits a situation before she has made her full case, and she made it in the driveway for another 12 minutes while Carl walked quietly through the house above us, his footsteps audible through the open windows, and Tessa stood at a professional distance with her clipboard and her neutrality. Linda tried several approaches. The guilt, "I can't believe my own son is turning me away." The practicality, "It just makes financial sense and you're being emotional." The historical precedent, "Families have always done this. It's only modern people who treat their parents like strangers." Jake held firm in the way he holds firm when he has been prepared, not enthusiastically, but with the steady quality of someone who has found where he stands and is not moving. I had talked to him for 3 hours the previous week after the listing news, after we both stopped not having the conversation, and what had come out of those 3 hours was a clarity about what we were and weren't willing to accept. What we were not willing to accept was this. Linda left with Ron, who had said almost nothing during the whole exchange, and whose silence I read as the silence of a man who understood his wife had made a significant error and did not yet know what to do about it. Megan and Kyle left behind them, Megan giving me a look as she passed that I cataloged as somewhere between sympathy and warning. I stood in the driveway in the cold October air and listened to the cars pull away. Tessa came to stand beside me. "I'm sorry about that," she said. "Don't be," I said. "You were perfect." She looked at the house. "It's a good house. Carl's almost done." "I know," I said. "I've wanted it for 8 months." We went inside. Jake called his mother that evening. I was in the kitchen making dinner, and he sat at the kitchen island and made the call. And I did not leave the room because we had agreed he would make it and I would stay, not to monitor but to be present, because this was a conversation about our house, and I was half of our. The call lasted 40 minutes. I will not reproduce it because it is Jake's and Linda's and belongs to the specific, complicated territory of a son and his mother working out a recalibration that is necessary and painful, and not mine to narrate. What I will tell you is that Jake's voice was steady throughout, that he said this is not something we're going to revisit more than once, that he said Rachel and I are aligned on this in a way that I had not, in 6 years of marriage, heard him say before. The particular way of saying it that means, this is not open for your consideration. This is settled. Linda cried. I could hear it from the kitchen. Jake did not backtrack. When he hung up, he sat at the island for a moment looking at the counter. Then he looked at me. "She said she didn't realize we were serious," he said. "She sold her house," I said. "I know. She drove 40 minutes with her entire family to our inspection." "I know. She said we can finally live in a new house." "I know." He looked at his hands. I think she believed what she was telling herself. That's the thing about my mother. She genuinely believes the story she's written. I thought about this. "I know," I said. "That's what makes it complicated." We ate dinner. We talked about the inspection report, which Carl had delivered that afternoon in a thorough document that identified 3 minor issues and 0 significant ones. The foundation was excellent. The electrical panel was updated. The attic insulation was above code. We closed 17 days later. The closing was at 10 a.m. on a Friday in November in a conference room at the title company with a table full of documents and 2 people whose names would be on the deed, Jake and me. Our loan officer, David Park, 9 years in residential lending, who had processed our application with the efficiency of someone who does this constantly and finds it satisfying, shook our hands at the end and said, "Congratulations, you picked a good one." He meant the house. He was right about the house. We got the keys at 11:15. We drove to the house and stood in the empty living room, our empty living room, with the afternoon light coming through the windows in the particular way I had noticed during the showing and had thought about ever since. And Jake put his arm around my shoulders and we stood there for a while without saying anything. The oak tree in the backyard was visible through the kitchen window. It was a good house. Linda needed 3 weeks to find an apartment. This I know because Jake kept me informed without editorializing, which was a courtesy I appreciated. Ron and Linda found a 2-bedroom in a complex 15 minutes from us, smaller than what they'd had, which was the adjustment they had always claimed they wanted and had, apparently, been planning to avoid by moving into our house. The apartment was fine, modern, a pool, a gym, the kind of place that photographs well and that Linda, in Jake's reporting, had described as temporary. I didn't respond to that characterization. Some battles are not worth entering. Megan called me 3 days after the closing. She is 2 years younger than Jake, pragmatic in a way her mother is not, and she has always had a slightly different relationship to reality than the rest of the family, less invested in the narrative, more interested in the facts. For what it's worth, she said, I told her this wasn't going to work. When? I asked. When she told me they were listing the house, Megan said. I told her she hadn't talked to you and Jake about it specifically enough. She said family doesn't need to negotiate. And what did you say? Megan was quiet for a moment. I said Rachel's going to have something to say about that. I laughed. The real one, the warm one. I did, I said. I know, she said. I saw. The first time Linda came to our house was in December, 6 weeks after we closed. We invited her for dinner. Jake and I had discussed the timeline, had agreed that the appropriate period of recalibration was real, but not indefinite, that the goal was a functional relationship conducted at the correct distance. The dinner was an attempt to establish what that distance looked like in practice. She arrived with a hostess gift, which was a set of kitchen towels in a color that was slightly wrong for our kitchen. This is a Linda thing. She selects gifts based on what she would want rather than what you have, and the slight mismatch is a record of whose preferences are being consulted. I said thank you and put them in the kitchen. She walked through the house. I watched her do it, the specific way she moved through each room, taking inventory, making assessments, the slight hesitation at each doorway that I recognized as the pause of someone forming an opinion. They are deciding whether to share. She had opinions. I could see them forming. She was, for the first time in my experience of her, not sharing them. In the living room, she stopped at the window overlooking the backyard, the oak tree. She looked at it for a moment. It's beautiful, she said. Not it would look better with or have you thought about. Just, it's beautiful. I stood beside her. I know, I said. It's why I wanted the house. She looked at me sideways, and I saw something in her expression that I had not seen before. Not warmth exactly, not the performed warmth, but something more genuine and more complicated. The look of someone who is in the process of a recalibration they didn't choose and is not entirely comfortable with and is perhaps beginning to understand is necessary. You're not going to let me run things, she said. Not a question. No, I said pleasantly. I'm not. She looked back at the tree. Jake's father was the same way about the house we sold, she said. 30 years. He had opinions about every corner of it. A pause. I thought I was just continuing something for the family. I understand that, I said, and I did. This is our family now. Jake and me, and eventually whoever else joins it. We get to decide what it looks like. She didn't respond for a moment. The kitchen towels are the wrong color, she said. I looked at her. I noticed when I bought them, she said. It was a habit. I laughed, the real one. Get me a receipt, I said. We can exchange them. She looked at me for another moment, then she laughed too. Not the warm tool laugh, a real one, a bit surprised at itself. We went to have dinner. I want to tell you about the apartment. 6 months after moving in, Linda and Ron had redecorated it into something that did not look temporary at all. A gallery wall in the hallway, a reading corner in the second bedroom that Ron had claimed, a kitchen with enough equipment that Linda could cook the way she likes to cook. Jake and I saw it for the first time in the spring, and I watched Linda walk us through it with the particular pride of someone who has made something their own. She called it cozy, not temporary. I noticed the word change and said nothing about it. After the tour, while Jake was talking to Ron about something in the living room, Linda and I stood in her kitchen, the one she had arranged the way she wanted, and she made coffee without asking how I took it because she remembered. She had always remembered. I was going to tell you to put the kitchen towels back, she said, handing me the cup, but then I thought, it's her kitchen. It is, I said. I'm working on it, she said. I know, I said. I can tell. She looked at me over her coffee cup with the expression she wears when she is deciding whether to say something. You know what I wanted, she said, was to not be left behind. I looked at her. I know, I said. I understand that. You were never going to let me do it the way I planned, she said. It was an acknowledgement rather than an accusation. Progress. No, I said, but you're not left behind. She considered this. The apartment is nice, she said. Ron likes the gym. I know, I said. It looks like it. We drank our coffee. We have been in our house for 8 months now. The oak tree looks extraordinary in the summer. The way it fills the kitchen window, the way it moves in the evening when there's a wind. I sit in the backyard under it on Sunday mornings with coffee when the weather is good, which is exactly what I imagined doing when I first saw it in the listing photos. The kitchen towels have been exchanged for ones in the right color. Linda picked them out on a second attempt, got them correct, and brought them to our second dinner with the specific satisfaction of someone who has passed a test they set for themselves. Jake talks to his mother twice a week on his own schedule, in calls that I am not present for and do not require reporting on. He is the best version of himself in relationship to his family. More present, more direct, more clearly the person he is rather than the person she needs him to be. And I have watched this develop with the particular satisfaction of someone who knows the cost of it and believes it was worth it. Linda comes to dinner once a month. She has opinions about the house. I can see them forming every time she walks through. She has, almost entirely, stopped sharing them unprompted. When she does share one, she phrases it as a question now, rather than a directive. Have you thought about instead of you should? This is progress. It is not complete. It will not be complete. Linda is who Linda is, and she is working on the parts that are changeable and is perhaps beginning to understand that some parts are not going to change, but the relationship can still be real. We are doing this, both of us. It is not warm in the way I wanted, and it is not cold in the way she feared, and it is something real and workable and ours. I stood in that driveway in October and I said this house isn't for everyone. What I meant was, this house is mine and Jake's. The foundation, the electrical panel, the attic insulation, the oak tree in the backyard that I have been thinking about since I first saw it in a listing photo, all of it ours. Linda had made a plan. She had sold a house based on it. She had driven 40 minutes with her entire family on a cold Tuesday morning because she had already decided, in the complete certainty of someone who has never encountered a boundary they could not warm their way through. And she had encountered one. Not hostile, not cold, just solid. The kind that doesn't move. Linda texted me last week, a photo of the oak tree from our backyard, taken during her last visit. Beautiful, she said, just that. I sent back the same word. We meant different things by it probably. That's okay. It's still my tree.